All right, what's up, guys? We're back. Today I'm joined by the great Paul Martins. Before we jump into that, I have some stuff that I want to get out of the way. I need to plug myself a little bit here. I'm actually really excited to announce this. I decided what I'm going to start trying to do is kind of formulate these conversations to be, helping people figure out where they want to go in life, how they want to get there. And a part of that is I'm going to be launching a digital course that's going to show you the process of how I kind of figured out what I wanted to do and break it down into the metaphysical ideas of how you can get there yourself. So the first step in this process is making sure that there's actually like a need and want for this in the world. I think there is, but that doesn't mean that there necessarily is. So what I'm going to do is set up a Calendly where you can essentially set up a time frame to talk with me for 30 minutes, for an hour, free of charge, just to talk to me. And, I want to pick your brain. I want to see where you're at, what you think, if this would be something that you're interested in. So down below, wherever you're watching, I'm going to put a link for Calendly. So hit that link, set up an interview with me, and let's talk. Now that we got that out of the way, Paul Martin. Paulie D. Every time I talk to him, I always think of Paulie D for some reason, but I don't know if I ever told you that.
Yeah, I'll take Paulie D.
So Paul and I, not really sure how we met, probably at the Mountain House. I got the dog on the screen.
This is Bob. What's up, Bob?
This is Bob. And whenever we met, Paul, I guess in my interpretation of what Paul does is he's a little bit of a Renaissance man. He kind of does a little bit of everything. He's always kind of doing this or doing that. I know he's thought about working on boats, and I know he's worked with like an app development at one point in time, and he's kind of just always on the move, so to speak. I think he does some real estate. So yeah, but we always have great, interesting conversations. So I definitely want to, get Paul's mindset on, from when he was a youngster and figure out, how he's kind of navigated this world and got to where he is. So to start us off, Paul, what's up?
Not a ton, man. So I'm gonna go be a yachty next year. I know that's the plan for
You're
sure
gonna do
at
it?
this point. And I guess you kind of want to talk about how I got to making the decision of what I want to do.
So let's with that being said, let's start from whenever Paul was a little kid. We're talking about 5-year-old Paul. And what can you remember what the very first thing you wanted to be was whenever you were a kid?
It's funny. I got two dogs around me right now. I wanted to be a vet.
Yeah.
I grew up in San Diego. We went to the zoo like every week, probably since I was 1 or 2. I love animals. I don't remember when I stopped wanting to be a vet. Probably in high school when I realized how much school they have to go to, and I was like, I'm gonna knock out school. I'm gonna knock out this school thing really quick and be done with it.
Yeah,
but
don't love them that much.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, vet was the first thing I wanted to be.
And then, so I guess whenever you're in high school, you realized that you didn't really want to be in school that long. Did you go to college?
I did. I went to Pepperdine. It's funny. So I did good in high school. School wasn't that hard for me. I didn't work that hard at it, but I just kind of like figured stuff out and was good at testing, and so I got good enough grades. And then there's this moment that sticks out in my life where I remember one of my best friends, Gunner, his mom was chewing out my dad at my graduation party because I was thinking about going to junior college because I was cheap and the price tag on Pepperdine was something crazy. And I didn't realize that they give there's financial aid packages. So I just looked at the price tag, whatever it was, $50,000 versus $2,000 to go to the Cuyamaca College in my neighborhood.
Of course.
And Terry Terhune, Gunner's mom, was chewing out my dad and saying, "Don't let that kid go to community college. Make him go." And
really,
yeah, it was weird. I think that's kind of changed in the last 15 years or whatever.
For sure.
But anyways, Pepperdine sent us a letter that said like I got like 90% of my college paid for. So then it was kind of a no-brainer. My older sister was there. It's on the beach. And so I ended up there, and it took me a different. I'm glad I went there for sure. It was a way better decision than going to a community college, in my opinion. But
I mean, being fiscally, that's a pretty young age to be like fiscally aware kind of those things. Because I know whenever I was going to college, the price tag didn't even like register really in my mind. It was just like, it was kind of, well, I could go out of state to Florida and it was about the same as being in state in Pennsylvania. So I was like, oh, okay. But like that scale, like that, that's I don't think that's something that really registers in people's brain whenever they're 18 years old and getting into college.
Dude, when I was 6, I don't know why I was reading about this or something, or my uncle told me or something random, but like it stuck in my head that like soda costs nothing to make and it sells for $2. That's the reason I've never drank soda.
Really?
Yeah. Like I was always like very focused on numbers. I think my family is like, they have a little like financial dysfunction, not like really overt, but when you're like,
but like an unhealthy relationship with money.
Yeah, it's just, we look at prices. I think it could go all the way back to my grandpa. He had 7 kids, and so I think just to like support his family, they had to be price conscious,
For
and then
sure.
it went down to his 7 kids, and then there's like 30 cousins. So we all kind of have a similar thing. Like if we get a sick deal, some kind of discount, like we tell everyone, you know what I mean? So it's funny. So I was always kind of price conscious, but it's actually just kind of shifting now in my life way later.
Where you're starting to, what does that mean? Like you're starting to be like a little bit more abundant? Or?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. I think like the way our family looks at money, it all boils down to fear. It's the fear of running out of money.
Sure.
And I think in a lot of my travels to, places where everyone's living paycheck to paycheck, it seems like it's just like somehow if you got some good karma and some skills and goodwill for people, it just works itself out. And like, I've never been close to living paycheck to paycheck. So it's like my fear is not logical. It's just inherited.
Yeah. And I mean, that's something crazy that we can even get into is like how fear is able to just motivate people into not motivate, but almost keep you in this like prison. Yeah. It keeps you in this mental prison of, either money or, certain things that you have to do.
Yeah.
So then I want to talk about that because it's a very fascinating thing to talk about and discuss because I have a very similar mindset that I'm starting to break with the whole scarcity around money. But before we get there, let's step back into where you're at in college, right? So so you got 90% off in college.
Yeah.
So I bet your old mentality that your grandfather passed down, he was like, nice, you got 90% off. Like, he was like, I'm proud of you, Paul.
I mean, my parents were for sure. But like that whole thing is like based on a million different pieces of data.
For sure.
They're like, they want you in college, but then they see how much money your parents are making and they calculate like, okay, what will he reasonably come at? And then they offer you a thing, But when you're 18, you have no idea how it works. I since figured that out.
It's one of those things you don't realize till after.
You're just like 90% off. And then you're like, your ego comes up and it's like, oh, Dad hasn't made any money for 5 years. That's why.
They must really want me.
I guess. Yeah.
So what did you study when you went to Pepperdine?
So I went to Pepperdine and I was like 100% focused on making the basketball team. And I did. And then all the basketball players were doing this new major that they launched called IMC. It was Integrated Marketing Communications. So basically you took all business courses and comm courses, but you didn't have to take the hardest business courses. You didn't have to take the crazy accounting course and whatever else was the most tedious course. So I took 80% business classes, but I'm technically a marketing comm major. Not that anyone's ever cared.
Okay. No, not that it's ever mattered.
Not at all. I should have done psychology or something that I was more interested in.
Well, yeah, psychology is a crazy thing in general. And that was definitely something I had thought about as well. Cause through our conversations, like, it's fascinating, but if you want to bring it back to fear, like, there's not really, if you just have a psychology degree, and I could be wrong on this, but it doesn't seem like there's much of a job market. Like, you kind of need to become a doctorate to be able to use like a psychology degree.
I think, it's one of those, like the world of academia, or it's like, if you don't go to school for 10 years, no one pays you. You have to do your own thing, really.
Right.
That's kind of how I am anyway. So I don't know, maybe me and you will both end up being therapists.
Well, if we want to go back to the thing that I kind of introduced at the beginning, I think there's a whole lot of psychology that I'm going to be putting into that digital course that I think will help people explore themselves. And honestly, quite frankly, I might send you it for free to get your opinion and see what you think about it and give me some feedback on it.
I'd love to do that. Yeah, I think, I think we have a similar way of communicating and connecting with people. And I think people like us, we kind of like have this desire to want to help people with stuff.
Right.
I think we're projecting. We're not sure what we want to do in our life. So we're like, we want to help other people figure out what they want to do in their life when we haven't even figured out what we want to do,
Well, and it's almost, I think, and it's interesting you say that, because I feel like what I want to do with my life is help other people figure out what they want to do in their life. Like, I feel like that's kind of my purpose, which is a really bizarre thing to kind of say. Like, it's like, my way of, I've kind of figured out, we've both kind of figured out like a lot of stuff about ourselves and like figured out how this world kind of works per se. And it's like, I kind of just want to help other people be able to see that almost. And I feel like that'll be like, there's something there almost.
Super
like,
fulfilling.
And it'll kind of like build on itself or something.
I hope you help a ton of people.
Well, and let's see here, because I know you help out with a high school basketball team. You're still doing that?
I coached for 2 years. I love those guys. It was super fun, but I'm not going to coach full time this year just because I don't know when I'm leaving, and the season.
Right.
If we keep winning, it can go, I think, into April, at least into March.
Right.
And I'm going to spend a couple months in the snow, so I'm going to be snowboarding. But if the way the yachting world works, it's kind of like you're planting seeds constantly, and you never know what's going to grow. You never know what yacht's going to hit you up and say, "Hey, we need you here." And it's usually like, "We need you here yesterday." Like, I've never seen a job.
Get on a plane.
I've never seen a job listing that's planning for a month out. Like, they're all at the most 2 weeks out, but it's usually 1 week, or like as soon as possible. So you can't really schedule anything that's like a long-term commitment.
So I'm definitely interested in talking about it, because I think that's a fascinating world. Before we get there, let's try to reel it back into Pepperdine. So you went for a telecom communication, you played basketball. What was your plan, like maybe around junior or senior year? What was your plan after that? Were you going to get a job? Like, what was your mindset?
I still didn't.
It was basketball?
No, basketball was over. Basketball lasted 2 months and I quit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It turned the thing that I loved the most in my life to that point, besides, my family, a couple people.
Sure.
Basketball was the next thing I loved the most. It turned it into a job. And so it was cool for a little while, and it was fun. I got to play with Reggie Miller for 2 weeks. He came and practiced with us, and you got kind of like, you know, in like a little weird way, you feel like a little famous playing basketball at college. And then all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, I'm waking up at 5 a.m. again. I'm missing this party. I'm missing that. And then the cherry on top was Pepperdine. I think like 95% of their student body goes and studies abroad at some point. And more, and something around 50% of them go for their sophomore year. And so even before you get to Pepperdine, they're pitching you this study abroad program. You apply for it. I applied for it before I made the team, still in tryouts. And then I'm on the team. And then 2 months after being on the team, they tell me you got accepted to go to Germany, Italy, or Argentina. And you have to do a $5,000 non-refundable deposit by November 5th or something if you want to go. And so now I'm looking at, do I want to try to play basketball and make this really serious, or do I want to go live in Italy? And it was funny because my sister spent her sophomore year in Germany, and me and my family went and visited her there. And still some of her best friends of life are from that year. And, you know, I talk to her, once a week or a couple times a month. And she was in Sweden, and she was in Spain, and she was in Egypt, and she was in all these cool places. And I was like on a basketball team where the average guy was like 6'6", a lot of like guys that can jump higher than me, that can shoot better than me. Like, I was 18. I don't think I had chest hair yet. I was like number 18 out of 19 guys on the team. I was like, am I ever even going to play? You know, it was a D1 team versus go live in Italy. And then on top of all of that, it was like the coach he was a first year coach. He came from he came from a junior college that dominated. And then this was his first year in D1. And so he was like trying to prove himself. So he did this whole like football hell week style where he just screamed at everybody. And like the penalties were like 5 at 5. We had to wake up at 5 a.m. and run 5 miles before practice. And like, it was just like, and I came from a shitty high school program. I had never been coached hard.
Okay.
So I was soft.
You're kind of just like natural. You're just like naturally gifted, and everything kind of just flowed. And so whenever a coach that was,
I was good.
Maybe arguably too regimented.
Yeah, I was good in high school. I was used to being one of the best 2 or 3 players on the court all the time. I was used to never sitting on the bench. And then I went to immediately, and I was used to a coach that didn't make us work hard and wasn't really that good of a coach. And so it went from that to this crazy drill sergeant. I was the worst player. I thought I was never going to play. And it was my first 2 months in college, and all of my peers, not the basketball players who were mostly like 22, all of my 18-year-old peers in the dorm were partying, meeting girls, doing all this stuff. And I was like just exhausted because my body had never been through this level of physical, you know, training. And then they were like, oh, do you want to go live in Italy, or do you want to keep doing this? And I was like, all right, I'm done with basketball. So I folded pretty quick. And then, I went to Italy sophomore year.
Well, do you feel like and so it's interesting, right? Because I think my objective with this is to find what you love, but did you just find that you no longer loved basketball the way it was, or like maybe you still loved basketball, but the environment that you were in was not cultivating that same appreciation for it?
No, I don't look at it that way. I still love basketball. I was not prepared, and I didn't have a good understanding of what was about to happen. And looking back at it, I still say it's like one of the biggest regrets of my life is quitting that team. And part of the reason I did was because I looked at it the wrong way. I said I have to do basketball or move to Italy. And that wasn't true. I could.
Okay.
And the reason I thought that was because I had a $5,000 non-refundable deposit to go to Italy. But I still could have paid that deposit, played basketball for the season, and at the end of the season made a decision. I didn't need to quit then.
Yeah, so you didn't even make it to this. I gotcha. So you didn't even make it to the season, right? So you could have decided.
I could have decided at the end of the year. But
so here's what I'm thinking. Do you think your fear of money kind of came in here, where you saw that $5,000 as, well, if I pay this, then I have to go?
And I didn't.
Yeah.
And I did. $5,000 was just saving my spot. If I decide not to go, the $5,000 gone. But it was a fee to save my spot, which I should have been happy to pay, because it's not like I had to pay. Like, it's college. Everything's a loan. So like, I finished paying my college loan 5 years ago or something. But like, in the long scheme of, in the big picture, like, it wasn't $5,000. It was $65 a month for the next 10 years. Didn't really matter, you know. So I should have stayed on the basketball team. But I was soft. I wasn't prepared. I mean, it's funny because,
but at the end of the day,
coaching in high school basketball, I'm coaching under this head coach who's in his 41st season or something, and he's like he's an intense guy. He's a screamer. He coaches hard. He loves hard. He's just another level that I didn't experience. I didn't experience his level until I was 31, when I started started coaching with him.
This is even more than Pepperdine.
Yeah, if I would have,
he's even more extreme.
Not the way the practice is structured, but the intensity mentally, because
emotionally,
and emotionally. Every year there's been kids crying in practice because he wants to break down. He's an amazing psychologist, I think, without even realizing it. But he gets to the point where it's like the metaphor of life. Like, what is sport compared to life? And for him, his metaphor for basketball is like being there for your family. And his thing is like,
gotcha.
If you're not mentally locked into the game and you leave your teammate out to dry, what kind of person are you? Like, you don't care about the team. You know, it's really gnarly for a 16-year-old, but
dude, that's
huge.
It
helps them grow up.
That's powerful,
because it's like,
real fast.
Like, self-awareness is another one. You know, you got some kid who's not a good shooter shooting 1 million shots. He'll be like, are you not aware that what you're doing is not the best for your team? And then it's like, so you're selfish. You don't care about the team. You just care about yourself.
Jeez.
It's gnarly, but like,
that's gnarly.
I love it. And then sometimes, every once in a while, parents will get in there and be like, you're being too tough on them. And he's like, you think life is going to be easy on them? He's gnarly. I love him.
That's crazy.
I love him.
Yeah.
But my point
dude.
is, if I had him from 14 to 18 years old, I wouldn't have quit, because he would have toughened me up.
Yeah.
And I would have been a more mature, wise 18-year-old than just like a soft guy that was like ready to quit, you know, like, oh, this is hard. Oh, I got a more fun option. Screw this.
Right. You know? Right. Yeah. Taking the path of least resistance.
Exactly.
You kind of, it sounds like, versus having that kind of figure, or that coaching figure that's like, well, you know, you're putting into something that's bigger than yourself. Like, it's almost, maybe it's almost like you kind of had an ego, or these kids even kind of have an ego of like, I'm going to shoot 1 million shots because I want to be the best.
Well, I mean, everyone has an ego.
See how you fit in. Oh, for sure. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying it sounds like what you're saying. Like, this coach is able to point to you and say, hey, this is your ego. You need to get rid of this for the betterment of the team.
Yeah. That's exactly what he does.
Yeah. Right. And it sounds like, you know, that was something, I guess, maybe that you kind of took to college almost and didn't like see the bigger picture. Is that a fair assumption? I mean, again, we all have egos, but no, you just don't think you were pushed that hard.
Yeah. I was just soft. I was just soft. I wasn't ready for that level. I went from like a level 2 intensity to a level 10. And if
Yeah.
I had gone from a level 6 to a level 10, I probably wouldn't have broke. But a 2 to 10 was just too much.
No, that makes
Yeah.
sense. That's actually probably a great way to explain
Yeah.
it, is that you kind of need to slowly, like, you can't just, the metaphor I would use for my life is like, 3 years ago, I wanted to be traveling the world, living in Brazil. And it's like, you can't just, throw that on yourself. Like, there's a whole bunch of things that needed to happen in those last 3 years that, needed to get me ready for this whole adventure,
Well, so the yachting thing kind of goes with me. These dogs are freaking out over here.
Yeah, they're getting happy.
With full-time travel. So like my big macro goal for the next 10 years of my life is to travel to 150 countries, which is 90 more. And I started dating a girl who's going to come and travel with me and work on the yachts with me. And she's been to two countries.
Nice. So that'll be eye-opening for her.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to like ease her in to like the way I think about travel and how I like to do things. I've slept in a lot of airports and train stations, and I usually don't book accommodation. Like, I show up in a city and figure out where I want to be or how long I want to stay. And for some people, that's like
more nomadic.
It's a lot of, it can create some anxiety,
Oh, for sure.
And so we've been like doing little trips, and we still haven't like not booked stuff. I mean, for her, it's just about like getting used to being around people that don't speak the same language, or like seeing a certain level of poverty, or like not having a car, just like little stuff,
Right.
But I think kind of like
little comfortable things.
Slowly but surely you can work your way into being comfortable with being in Mozambique and not knowing where you're going to sleep,
Yeah. I mean, is that being comfortable on being uncomfortable thing?
Yeah. Or being comfortable with the unknown. It's just like, being confident that you're going to figure it out. And like,
right.
Sometimes figuring it out, like, it might not be the most ideal or comfortable situation, but like, it's going to be fine.
At the end of the day, it all works itself out.
Usually. I mean, we're still here.
Yeah.
we made
what is it? It's something like, there's nothing to worry about unless it's something like there's nothing to worry about unless it's the end. But if it's not the end, damn, I'm losing
it. All good.
I'm not sure if you've heard that before.
I don't know that one, no.
Or whatever, we can drop it. It's like if...
Just Google it real quick. You need it. You need a Jamie. You need a Joe Rogan Jamie. What is it, Jamie?
Yeah, right. There's nothing to worry about unless it's the end. Quote. I'm gonna. We'll figure it out later. Yeah, everyone can Google it if they care. Yeah. I'm curious though. Yeah. So with like your girlfriend and everything, what's your perspective on that? Like, did she want to kind of adopt this mindset that you kind of have, or was it more that she, like, are you guys just like energetically compatible and it kind of just, you could see that she had wanted that before, or did you kind of introduce her to that idea and it was just like the idea that love kind of just encouraged her to do it? Like, how would you?
Well, we're not really doing it yet. So we met in March, and so that was like a year into COVID. And before COVID, I was 100% dead set on like this traveling to 150 countries until I get to 150 countries, I'm not thinking about anything else besides that. Like, I'm not evaluating other options anymore. Like, I had just finished another business venture, and I was like, I don't want to be focused on business. I'm going to take off and travel, probably another 20 or 30 countries with no plan, and we'll see how things go. But I really have my head down to like go and see most of the world. And
That's
so
awesome.
that was a year before I met her. I was like 100% locked into that. And then COVID happened.
Okay.
So I was still locked into it, but I was just waiting because I thought visas and everything would be a pain in the ass. And then I met her. And when I met her, I was not like holding back on that story. Like I just said, this is what I'm doing for sure.
Sure.
And then we just fell in love really quick. And so there wasn't much of a conversation because I never had to tell her, I never had to like break this news to her that like, I'm not going to live a regular life in the States and work a regular job.
Right.
Like she knew from day one that this was the plan. And I never faltered and said like, oh, well, maybe now things change. I'm not going to do it. I was always like, if things work out with us, you should come with, you know?
Yeah.
And so there was never a conversation where it was like, change of plans. I'm going to stay here. And
you were purely honest about it all and just stayed committed to your true self.
Yeah. We were just talking about it last night, and like, she has some worries about it, you know? But she overall, like, she's pretty fired up and she's excited to go and explore too.
Right.
But
it's new.
It's for her, it's just a little bit of fear of the unknown, you know? It's like, we're really compatible here in our comfort zone. And like, we pretty much never fight. Everything flows. It's like the most healthy relationship I've ever been in for sure. But could that change when there's fear of the unknown and we don't know this and we don't know that and our environment changes and we have less control? I think it will, but we'll see.
Well, nothing's stagnant, right? The only thing in this universe that is consistent is change.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things. Yeah.
And that's a good quote. And so where was I going with that? It's like, you're almost kind of, I guess, and what I'm hearing is it sounds like you're starting to feel that like, I don't want to say it's not flowing, but you're starting to feel that like angst you're kind of coming out, which is completely valid. Right. Yeah. And so to relate it back with what you were saying earlier, this sounds like you're kind of, that process of, let's say her comfort zone is that 2, and maybe you're already at that 10, like you said, you can just go on a plane tomorrow and be in a different country and then just figure it out.
Trying to meet in the middle a little bit. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's like just slowly kind of bringing her up a yes.
Yeah.
And it sounds like she wants to, right? I'm not trying to say like you're controlling almost, but just like, it's like, well, this is what I'm doing. If you want to be a part of it, I can guide you on these micro steps to kind of get you there as well.
Yeah. That's pretty much what we're doing. And it just all comes down to trust. I think she trusts me a lot, and that's why she's willing to go for it.
Which is important.
But because when you've traveled a long time and you've done it like I've done it, there's like a shitload of people who hit you up that are like, how do you do that? How do you do that? And like, the main thing I just remind them is just, you can just come home anytime. So like, you just go.
Right.
You figure it out. If you don't figure it out, come home. If you don't like it, come home. If you run out of money, come home. Like that,
Well, that's
you don't have
that's
to commit
a big
much.
one.
It's this mental thing where people, I don't know, they just kind of get stuck,
Well, and so I think what hits me, right? Like let's bring this back to the money, because you even brought it up again. The money aspect of it, I think, is what hits me the hardest. It's something I'm working with in my life, trying to adopt that more abundance mentality.
Yeah.
And maybe this also helps like figuring out, if we go back to your process, right? So like, what after college, and I kind of want to try to lead this towards like money. Obviously I don't want you to like disclose whatever you're comfortable with, but how do you, kind of how are you able to do that? So, and I guess a part of that is like, after college, so you quit the basketball team. Maybe this is the transition we make. Would you just go back to college and we'll get to the money aspect.
So first off, I'm not rich. I'm not a millionaire. but I think I've had like $10,000 since I was like 14. I was babysitting like my 6-year-old cousins when I was 12, and my uncle would pay me like $30. When I was like 14, no, I probably started working for Dan Smith, one of my buddy's dads, doing painting, demolition, ripping bushes out, like whatever he wanted, for $8 an hour in the summers.
Okay.
Since I think I started working for him when I was like probably 12 too. So I just always made money and saved. And like in college, I worked in an Italian restaurant. I tutored little rich kids in Malibu. I babysat some kids. I just always did a little something. And then right after college, I got my real estate license. I started selling some houses. I started flipping some houses. Was part of a couple teams that built some houses. So from 22 to 28 years old, I didn't make a ton of money, but I made an average amount of money for a kid from California in his 20s working. And I just always kind of saved at least half of it. And I always lived in like, a house with like 6 dudes. So it was like a sick house with like an ocean view, but if the average rent was $1,000, like mine was 700. So like I always like live a little bit below my means and just work a little bit. And then I started buying stocks when I was in college too. So I think that helps.
So was it mostly just like wise, I guess, savings and investing at the end of the day?
Just savings and investing
is like what?
I mean, it's pretty simple. People are, how do you do that? It's like, well, I mean, I always had like an inexpensive car, inexpensive rent, and just made average money.
Right.
And
it's like, what's the most important thing to you at the end of the day?
And then like,
it's like, well, traveling.
Yeah. A lot of those dollars turned into, $2 or $3 or $5, just not with any like crazy crypto or penny stock investing, but with like buying Amazon, buying the S&P 500, buying Apple,
kind of the simple stocks.
I mean, I pay I think it's $100 a year to this service called the Motley Fool that, they're like full time. They dig into different, companies to invest in. And so instead of spending a ton of time doing that, I just try to spend 3 or 4 hours twice a month around the 1st and the 15th. And I read about what they recommend. I listen to their podcasts and I buy stocks of companies that I think have a really tiny chance of ever failing and have a good chance of growth based on what these professionals say. So I
you just try to find the ones that are stable and then are in a market that's expanding almost.
Exactly. I think it's generally conservative, but if the market goes like it has been, then it's like your money goes 3x or 5x and you're comfortable.
And then you don't need to make a lot.
And then I keep working, but now I've kind of shifted from like before I did real estate because it was fun. I got tired of it. I got tired of sales and negotiating and business. So now I'm making a little money working on boats, or I'm a certified scuba dive master. So sometimes when I was traveling, I would get free accommodation and barter and help the dive shop move around tanks or follow people who needed a little extra help while they were 30 feet under the water. So instead of spending $1,000 a month on an activity like scuba diving, I was doing it for free. That kind of deal.
Yeah, that's actually you kind of are setting out everything that you kind of want to do. You become It's almost like ties into the beginning when I was calling you a Renaissance man. It's like you almost figure out how to do all these like little things so that way you're able to then just jump into wherever you want to go and then use your expertise in those fields to do what you love doing, right?
Yeah.
Like if you love scuba diving, become a master at it. So then you become valuable to the people who do scuba dive. So now you're able to kind of help them out to, stay for free at places. And that kind of goes into stretching your dollar farther because now you can just leave your money and keep it investing as opposed to having to sell these stocks and then pull it out and then do all this other stuff.
Exactly. That's the idea.
So then do you think and then it sounds like, from the age of 12 until maybe the age of 28 or even 30, you kind of, did you kind of work in waves, like where there was like periods of time where you'd work a lot and then you'd vacation, or was it all pretty consistent?
I guess you could say waves. I mean, you could say from 12 to 28, I worked whenever I could, whenever I wasn't in school, or whenever there wasn't like some really fun option of something I was excited to do. So like, from 12 to 22, I worked in the summers, random nights after school, and maybe weekends when there wasn't any fun parties. And then from 22 to 28, I worked a pretty regular schedule. But real estate's funny because a lot of it you can do from just your phone, communicating with people or texting pictures or sending a DocuSign, all this kind of stuff. So I worked probably like pretty regularly, like Monday through Thursday, 9 to 5, and then random stuff on weekends. But there was a lot of times that I just like took a month off or whatever spontaneously, because it wasn't like corporate America or something where I had to be in a certain place at a certain time.
Right.
I don't know if I could do that. I guess everyone has their price, but I don't think I'm going to get paid enough to do something like that, probably.
I mean, I think one of the biggest traps that I think our society has fallen into is the idea of trading your time for money.
Yeah.
Because I mean, how much how can you actually put a dollar amount on, time? Like, how can you say 1 hour is worth X dollars, right? Like, I mean, for so many different reasons, they're just printing money like crazy. And then on top of that, it's like, well, every hour that you spend doing something, you're never going to get that hour back, whether it's sleeping or going to the gym, doing an interview, it's like, so how do you even quantize, that hour down to an amount of money, which is even out of your control, right? Like, I think that's something I'm kind of coming around to is like, I don't really want to, and maybe this is an interesting perspective to bring towards to you, because it sounds like you're kind of, I don't want to say you're still doing it almost, but like, I guess with like the boating stuff, you kind of are, but you're traveling, right? So you're still.
See, but the boating thing,
I'm
not doing it for money. I'm doing it because
you're doing it for the travel.
I'm doing it because I want to do it. And it's not just for the travel. The travel is a piece of it, but it's also like, and I figured this out in the scuba diving world. It's about who are you spending time with? And like scuba divers, yachties, ski bums, those are my kind of people. Like they wake up in the morning and they're like, all right, I'm going snowboarding, or I'm going scuba diving, or I'm on a boat because I want to get to a place that like you can only get to if you're going to spend $100,000 to charter a boat. You're a billionaire and you can buy a boat, or you work on the boat. I don't have $100,000 to charter a boat. I'm not a billionaire. And so the only way to get on that boat that's going to the Arctic, or that's going to Tonga to scuba dive, or that's going to these places, I got to work on it. So it's not so much for the money.
Right.
But that does help. It's an added thing. But like the reason I'm doing it is because I want to do it. The money's just an extra perk.
And I think and to me, it sounds like it kind of comes back to your original, your one goal, your one idea of, I need to visit 150 countries within the next 10 years. Like I think that being your clear motive, right? That trumps the rest of the stuff. It's like, oh, I can work on a boat. Like I don't need to pay for the travel. I don't need to pay for my housing, and I get paid to travel almost. Yeah. It sounds like, I mean, you got to trade your labor at some points and all this stuff, but at a macro level, you're, kind of, you're executing on that goal with such low overhead almost.
Yeah. I mean, I could go and travel for probably, I have a spreadsheet that's like a run out of money spreadsheet. Like if the market goes to shit and this and that, and I don't work, I could travel for probably 5 years, maybe more. But now with Michelle in the picture, she's younger, she has less money. So it's like, all right, well, let's go get a job. And that way we can both be less worried about money. Because I took the last however many years to like realize that if I need to make money, I can just go make it. Where when you're younger and you haven't made that much money because you haven't had that many jobs, it's hard to wrap your head around, well, we're just going to go and travel and like spend money on Airbnbs and spend money on fun stuff and like, but we don't have a job. We're just going to run out. And you don't realize like there's a lot more opportunities that will come to you. Like, there's a million people.
It's that abundance.
There's a million people making money online. I don't know if that's what we'll end up doing, but like you can make money in scuba diving. You can be a tour guide. In a lot of the world, you can just go work in a bar. Like there's
ways to make
tons
it happen.
Of options. And if you get to a point where you're down to whatever your comfort level is, $2,000, $5,000, like you're feeling like I'm really scared of running out of money, then you just go to a cheap place and you figure out where's the next place you're going to make money. And a lot of people in this world, like they go pick weed in Northern California and make, $7,000 a month for 3 months. Okay, now I got 21 grand. Or they go work in fishing in Alaska. Some of those guys make 10 grand a month, and you're in beautiful Alaska learning a new skill and doing something with nature. Or they go do a scuba diving job or a skiing job, or they figure it out. Like, we're human beings are pretty capable, There's lots of.
No, that's for sure.
There's probably 98% of the population has like less access to like an easy life. Like we're first world kids from California with two parents who love us, a big family. We're lucky enough to be like friendly, active people that have 100 friends that we can hit up and say like, can you help me get a job? Like, I'd be willing to bet that me, you, or Michelle, in the next 3 hours, if we pretended like we had $0 and we had to get a job, I bet we could get 10 jobs in the next 3 hours. We might have to be, and maybe we might have to be a gardener. We might have to do something, but it's like we're not going to run out. Like our little fear in our head is just about like maybe our ego and like, well, I don't want to take a job that's below me or something. But it's like, what's below you? Like every human's doing some kind of job. Nothing should be below you.
I think a part of that voice though is also like, it's the voice that keeps you alive. It's that voice that's like, hey, you do need, because and I know you're not saying this, but it is a very valid concern of where am I going to get my next meal? Where is the, my money going to come from? And it's a valid concern, right? But it's being able to, I'm just saying in general, it's a valid like thought process, but the caveat with this is saying that you need to you almost need to be able to view like all the opportunities that our world has to offer. And on top of that, we're the most adaptive animal on planet Earth. Like there is no animal that's as adaptive as us. It's why we're at the top of the food chain. And it kind of goes back to your point is like, you can learn all these new skills. We have all these opportunities to do new things. And it's just that it's as long as you have an internet connection, which I think like 90% of the world at this point has, maybe that number's a little inflated, but I'm pretty sure like over 90% of the world, even in poor countries, have access to like a cell phone. I'm pretty sure the number, maybe I'll look that up real quick just so.
Hey, can I'm going to run to the restroom real quick. I'll be back in a minute. I'll be quick.
All right, I'll have to entertain people. I got it. How many people have access to the internet? Okay, so it's a little bit off with this number. Right here, I have 4.6 billion people have access to the internet worldwide. That's 60% of the global population. How many people use the internet? That was January 2020, 21. Of this total, so what is that saying? There were active internet users worldwide. 4.6 billion were active internet users worldwide, 60%. Of this total, 92% access the internet via mobile devices. So, okay, maybe there is a little bit of a gap there with 60%, but, and so not really sure where to go with that. Paul just left, so I guess I got to keep you guys entertained for a little bit. Yeah, so I think that's super fascinating and definitely something. I'm definitely glad I looked that up so I could give you guys the accurate information on that one. But yeah, I think what that entails. We'll see what Paul has to say about this as he's coming back now. Could you hear me as you were walking away? So I found that 60%, it's actually 60% of people around the world use the internet. And of that 60%, 95% of them access it via a phone. So,
yeah, but I
guess we're not.
It could be 80 or 90 within, who knows, 5 years, 10 years.
Pretty soon. I mean, what Elon's working on with SpaceX, they're trying to, get internet available to every spot in the world.
Really?
With, it's, what's it called? StarNet? I think it's called StarNet. I'll have to ask my brother. He's working on the project. I'll have to bring him on.
Oh, your brother works at SpaceX?
To talk about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
When did he get that gig?
He got it just before I left San Diego.
Oh, cool.
So maybe 4 or 5 months ago.
Good for him, dude. That's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, he's loving it.
How many people work for SpaceX?
That's a good question.
I wonder. There's 1,000.
Let's go back to the internet search for that. I don't think it's that many.
Where's he working?
Yep, it is a lot more than I thought. 9,500. He's in LA.
Cool. Is he gonna come? Is he gonna get to come visit you in Brazil?
I don't know. He hasn't. Dude, he's so busy, man. Like, I think Elon expects people to like work his crazy work life of like 16 hours a day. Like, he wants those people that are passionate about what they do and like have that drive towards what they do.
Sure.
So I might not even be able to get him on a podcast for 2 hours.
Wow. Well, hopefully Elon gives him a little time off.
I'll have to hit him all. We'll be like, dude, let my brother talk to me. But this is actually an interesting transition back. I'm going to flip it back to whenever you came up with this idea. You said to yourself, I'm going to travel 150 countries in 10 years. How did you, because I feel like that's kind of like your passion, right? Or your mission in life right now. How did you kind of come up with that? And like, what did it kind of feel like whenever it occurred?
So I traveled from 2016 to 19 pretty much the whole time, without much of a plan. And when I came back, I never liked it back in San Diego living at home as much as I did traveling. I just didn't feel as alive. And so I came back because I had a breakup with a girlfriend and I wanted to be close to family. And then I thought, okay, 3 years was enough. I'm going to start making money again. I sold some houses. I moved to downtown San Diego. I mean, life's good. Like it's fine that way, but it's not great. It's just good. And
Just
and
good.
so there was a point where it's funny. I ended up at my mom's house and I was just crying to her that like I don't feel that good. Like I don't like life here that much. Like I just feel like it's so focused on chasing money. And I'm gonna go travel again. And it's fun. The next day she got shingles because like
Damn.
I was crying. I wasn't like a little bit. I was like I've been here for 6 months. I'm trying to be happy and like I'm just not like and my life seems great. Like there's nothing
I
wrong
was
with
in
it.
San
Like
Diego.
I make a good living. My schedule's super flexible. I'm surrounded by loved ones. I'm doing fun stuff all the time. But I think I just get bored with like the same routine.
The, yeah.
Even though my routine is like it's more variable than like a 9 to 5 person. Like it's changing every day the way I was doing that. You know, seeing
Sure.
different properties, meeting different people, but it just wasn't. I think I just got addicted to like the new sounds, new smells, new learnings, like all this stuff when you're in different countries and you're like learning about crazy history of some culture that you didn't even know existed, you know? And then I think also going back to like that tribe, that group of people, the scuba divers, the ski bums, like I miss those people and their stories, you know?
Right. And how they kind of
I was just
doing their thing.
bored of the like the classic American or like first world thing, like go to school, make some money, find a partner, get married, have kids. Like that story at that point in my life just didn't resonate with me. So
it's like this isn't
yeah,
it.
so I decided I was off again, and then COVID happened, and then I was like, all right, well this time sucks. So I kind of pivoted. A couple different things happened, but I just dug my feet and I was like, all right, when the time's right, the time's right. Like I'm not giving up on this idea. And then I was going to leave multiple times. One time, the dating app, basically a chance to make like what I thought was maybe a couple $1,000,000 and like for sure $8,000 a month. That came to me and it was doing something new, like kind of in tech that was exciting. That was also on like a list of priorities in my life, which was like start a company with a small team. So I actually had an opportunity to go work on the motor yacht Elysian, which is the yacht that's owned by the owner of the Boston Red Sox. I was going to go on that, but then there was this little money opportunity. So that stopped me. And then 4 months later, they offered me that again because I made friends with a handful of the people that work on that yacht. But then I had met Michelle and we'd only been together for a couple months. And I was like, I'm not ready to bail on this girl. I want to see where this goes. So I didn't take it again. And so it's like, I'm just like waiting and waiting. Now Michelle is like, we're going to have Christmas with her family in Idaho. And so I keep pushing it back, but like, I'm not giving up on it. I'm like, I'm doing this because I know it's where I feel the most alive. I know where when I have one-way tickets and I don't have a plan, that's when the most exciting shit happens to me.
Okay. Yeah, that's where like you just feel alive and just everything.
This unanticipated stuff happens. The people that just come into your life that are just like have wild stories, like that aren't like the people that I meet here. I have tons of friends who I love here, but like I don't meet like a random dude from Namibia who left when he was 13 and has, you know, been to everywhere and is inviting me back to his house, you know, to like go to his sister's
which is interesting.
Wedding. It's like just crazy shit happens that to me is like so exciting.
It's so like it resonates with your core at a fundamental level. That'd be a way to put it.
I guess. Yeah, it's just kind of like I'm just a little bit addicted to like I guess like variety, you know.
The change,
The
adrenaline, like
the
kind of comes
adrenaline of like not knowing what's going to happen, and then something really random and
something cool happens.
You know.
I just read yesterday. I actually just read a book, The Alchemist. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, that's a great book.
Have you read it? You read it?
Yeah, I read that freshman
okay.
year of high school. This teacher had us read it. It has tons of good quotes in it. A lot.
Oh, dude, it's insane.
It's Paulo Coelho or something, right? He's a Brazilian guy, isn't he?
Yeah, Paulo Coelho. Okay. I found out real quick. I did find out that he was a socialist. I was really? telling this chick about it. We were gonna read it together, and she was like, that guy's a socialist." Yeah. So
she was out.
I don't want to read it. Yeah, she was out because of that. I was like, all right, but like, eventually I got to a point. Enough people recommended it to me. I was like, all right, I got to read it.
It's great. He has a couple really good books, but yeah, that one has stuck out to me.
Yeah,
a lot of books I don't remember, but that one, there was tons of quotes in that where it's kind of like, one of them is like, bad exists so you can appreciate good. You know, like just little wise sort of things like that.
Yeah, what I took away from it, because I just read it yesterday. I guess audiobook technically, but I just listened to it all day yesterday. And I just found that like the metaphorical like structure of it all, and like the way everything kind of like flows, and like this kid going on his path and his journey to find his purpose. And then, to me, it was just about those like intricacies of like the way like that the world spoke to him kind of thing was what I kind of took away from it the most. And I hear a lot of it kind of in your story with how you're talking about how you need to travel and go find things, and you found like, your passion. And at the end of the day, that's what I want to help people find is like, what's your passion in this world? What do you want that number one thing to be, and then kind of everything else, will kind of feed off of that and kind of go with it.
Cool.
So with your app though, what ended up happening with that? Because I remember I tested it and stuff, and then I remember you thinking that you were going to leave at some point.
There was basically a conflict between the people. They hired me they're like venture capitalists. So they have their hands in like 20 different businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And this business that we started talking about in 2016, this guy's like a good family friend. He's a closer friend to my dad than me, but I think closer in age to me. So cool buddy, still a cool buddy. He does a bunch of different business deals, and I was just giving him shit that like, how come nothing's happening with this? And like the answer is, he makes a bunch of money doing a bunch of different businesses, and he can't focus on it. So I was like,
spread too thin.
Yeah, he spread too thin. I was like, I'll focus on it if you want. Like, I'm into this idea, and like I'll be 100% into it. And so this conversation was like over a couple years. It was literally over 5 years. I think I closed him on paying me when I sat down at a lunch and read him a timeline. And I said, we first talked about this I have the date because I take notes on a CRM, And I said, we first talked about this before I left to travel in 2016. I went to 30 countries. I was gone for 3 years. I came back. This happened, that happened, COVID happened, and you still haven't done shit with it. It's like, you're never going to do anything with it because it's not a priority, and you need someone who it is their priority. And
right.
So anyways, and there was also 3 other people involved who I'm not really close with. I'm just close with him. So he vouched for me. He brought me in. And then what happened was they said, this is going to be your baby. We're going to have meetings once a week, but you're going to know everything about it. You're going to be focused on it. And, you're going to lead the charge. And what happened was within 2 months, I was one of the guy's assistants. I became an assistant to a guy.
So you were a CEO?
No.
Like, it sounds like essentially what they were doing is establishing you as the CEO.
No.
Is that not what it was?
Because of egos. They don't want to give me that time. They're older. They're rich. Whatever.
But if they're just venture capitalists, it's not
like. But they like to say that it's their business and they're building it. So they're not.
I feel like I see the conflict already.
Yeah,
but
no,
I'm not.
The conflict was.
I'm not a venture capitalist.
Was there, but they were paying me twice a month, and I had stock that vested monthly. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll do it. So I was an assistant for a couple months, and then at a certain point, I went back and I said, I'm an assistant to this guy, who is he works for like 5 or 6 of their companies. So I'm like, once again, he's not focused. On top of that, he doesn't understand the demographic. Like, we're a dating app. He's been married for 15 years. He was married when the internet started. And he's a developer. He doesn't. So it was just kind of. Just kind of like.
Yeah, I'm a software engineer, man. I get it.
Once again, you can say, I'll do this because you're paying me, but like, it's not going anywhere because there's no leader here.
No.
No one is taking. So anyways, long story short, we didn't come together as a team and it was done. It was cool. And there was another thing with me with business. Usually there's some point where I get frustrated and I'm just like, we're not on the same page. I don't want to spend my life negotiating about things. Like, to me, negotiating, some people think of it as like a fun challenge. And like, I guess I used to in my early 20s. And now I just almost see it as kind of like a waste of time and like frustrating. And I'm just like, I want to go do stuff. I don't want to just talk to you about, you want more, you want me to have love. Like, we're just going to play this whole game. And it's just like, it all
depends, right? What you're negotiating over.
Yeah.
Like, if you're negotiating over like the way you want to implement something and everyone's on the same page of like what the bigger picture is, I think that's one thing. If you're negotiating about like a car deal, for instance, that's another thing. And, kind of to your point, like, I'm not going to negotiate. Whenever I sold my car, I was like, I'm not negotiating.
Yeah.
Like, this is the number. I know how much this is worth. This is it. I went to like 3 people and it wasn't until the third, like the guys were like, oh, well, we gave you our best number. I'm like, all right, then peace.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to do it. And then it wasn't until the third guy where I was like, here's my number. And they were like, oh, okay. Yeah, we'll do it. Yeah. And it's like, it's to your point. It's like, if you're negotiating about like the price and it's like $1,000 here, $1,000, it's like, dude, you're not like, we're not doing this. Like, I don't care about my ego. Here's the value of it. Like, let's just do this.
It goes back to the time. Like, time is your most scarce asset. To me, it's the most important thing we have. And it's like, I don't want to spend my time talking about money that much. I don't want to spend my time, I don't know. I just got tired of business, I guess. I think I'd love to do business if the team was like incredibly on the same page and like incentivized correctly and the structure was set up. But most of what I've seen in business, and I've only been involved in like, really small business, less than 10 people on a team, is it's hard to get people on the same page. If you have like and
that's what you need an effective leader for.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're the power structure, the hierarchy, at least that you were in. I don't want to call it a power structure. I guess it kind of was,
a power structure.
At least your hierarchy. Yeah. Well, the hierarchy you were in, everyone was just so like spread out on 6 different projects.
It was.
Meanwhile, you're the assistant and you're the only one that's dedicated to this project. It's like, in my few years as running a business, like it doesn't work. You can't like, especially at a startup stage of something like. I knew it wouldn't work, but they didn't tell me that I was going to be an assistant. And then I think they would, because of how their egos work, they're like trying to protect my ego, and they don't want to call me it. They're trying to protect your ego.
Yeah, it's like they don't want to call me an assistant. And I was like, guys, I'm an assistant. I'm just doing what he wants me to do. which is not what I think we should be doing. Like, I think we should focus.
Gotcha.
I think I should be focusing on this. And you're telling me to do this.
Yeah.
This is not my expertise. I'm not the right person to do it. And you guys are overpaying me to do it. And so why don't you let me do well, it's not time for that yet. And it's like, well, then you shouldn't even be paying me yet. But you don't want to say that because you want to get paid.
Yeah.
So
Of course.
It was a little bit
course.
of a clusterfuck, but everything's a learning thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What
was your big learning experience from that whole situation then, from a business? Maybe that you just don't like business?
No, I like business. But I think that if you're going into a business with any level of apprehension, there's something you're not clear about or you're not confident about, you shouldn't do it. I mean,
you need to be able to see the
unless
vision.
you need it, unless you need the money. I didn't need it. I did it because I thought this could be cool and I think I could make a lot of money. But at the same time, I already knew that there was some structural things that were incorrect about it. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. How it's set up.
Yeah, it just, the people weren't focused on it. They were spread too thin. And the real decision makers, they were making too many decisions about too many things where they lost bandwidth. And this was never their priority, which is why 5 years later, it was nothing. And I was trying to say, let it be my priority. But then they had to they had to give me some power, and they were never willing to give some power.
They didn't want to. That's so crazy to me. That's so crazy that they were willing to like just throw money at it while trying to keep it in their name.
Yeah,
almost.
but
like, did you have to
but
clear?
It's all relative. You know what I mean? To them, they threw money at it. But like, would you be willing to throw $8 at something? Yeah. So for them, however much they were paying me was the equivalent. You know.
I guess it was their name, that they cared more about their name being at the top of it, kind of deal. Like, did they want you, like, everything you had to do get cleared through them? Is that what like kind of happened?
Kind of.
We don't have to go deep into it if you don't want to.
I mean, I'm down to go deep into it, but I think here I'll wrap it up this way. The main thing that I took away from that, and a lot in business when business partnerships don't work out, is that people are hard to understand sometimes. And when you put money into it, it makes them even harder to understand. And it's just like, if you're not really, really passionate about the problem that the business is trying to solve, then there's a good chance you'll just say fuck it at some point, because it's not easy.
Okay.
Making money and building stuff in collaboration with people isn't easy. And so if you're not, like some of the startup books that I've read, it's like, if you're not willing, what's the metaphor that, I forget who made this metaphor, but it's stuck in my head. It's like, if you have a co-founder and they're not someone that you would want to be in a trench with in a war, then don't do the business with them. You know what I mean?
That's interesting.
If it's just someone who's like, you know, maybe you have some skills that align, or you think you can do it together, but like you don't really care about them, and you don't want to go to war with them, then it's like, it's probably not the right person. Which I don't know. A lot of people would argue against that, but I'm kind of like, I don't know. My first business, there's validity in it. I had another business relationship that ended after 2 years, and that one was a friendship that turned into a partnership, and like we couldn't do both. He couldn't do both. Once we became business partners, the business partnership was over the friendship, and it hurt my feelings because I wanted to be like brothers. I wanted to still be really good friends. but he couldn't be friends and business partners. One had to overtake the other. And the
why do you think that happened? Like, are you able to go into that a little bit more?
I don't know why that happened. I think it happens because it's kind of the same reason why, like, I encourage my family not to do any business together. You know, we're like old school East Coast, Irish, Italian, and it's like everything's like the family business. Like, oh yeah, you can get your brother to work for you and this and that. The thing that happens is you used to have a friend come over and drink a beer and talk about whatever, and that's all they were. And that's great. But now they're walking in a room and immediately your brain starts thinking about that money you were going to make, or that conversation you had about this other deal, or this or that. And you can't be in friend mode anymore because there's always loose ends to tie up in business. And so
there's always, it starts creating a gray line around your relationship of if we're talking about business or if we're talking about friendship.
And it's really hard to do. And so with that friend, it was just kind of like, we used to have amazing conversations about life and family and goals and all this kind of stuff. And then now that we were making money together, that's what we thought. That's what we thought about when we were together. It became the priority of our relationship. And ultimately, when I ended it, that's what I told him. I said, I still want to be your friend. And I think what's happening is we're not friends anymore. And there's no amount of money that's worth more than our friendship.
Just gotta change it. Yeah.
I would rather have a friend, you know. And maybe there's some friends that can do it, but for us, it wasn't. The friendship suffered because of the business relationship. And it was cool. I'm glad that I realized that, because now I can call him and we can have a talk for a couple hours about his kids and how life's going, and he'll be curious about my life, and it's great. And
so you can move past it then, essentially. You just weren't able at the time to be friends and in a relationship and in a business relationship.
Yeah,
together.
We couldn't do both. So I'm glad. I'm glad about all
glad that it worked out the way it did.
All of those experiences, all the business experiences, I'm glad, because they led me to a point where I think I'm more patient and able to be much more selective, opposed to just saying, "Oh, that's exciting, I'm going to do it." Like, yeah, that's exciting, but
good.
There's 1,000 other opportunities. You want to pick one.
There's no shortage.
You want to pick one that's exciting and well structured, and you're passionate about it, and it's someone you want to be in the trenches with, like all those things.
You need all the dominoes to align before you're able to kind of pull the trigger on it or start flicking on.
If you have the luxury and you don't need money right away, I think you should be patient. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I guess then what's the goal then? You need to be able to set your life up in a way such that you are able to be patient, to wait for them?
Well, I don't know. If your goal is about making a certain amount of money, that's different. My goal is about doing things and going places. So
right.
The money doesn't have to be tied to it. Like, if it costs $100,000 to go to the Arctic, but I don't have $100,000, then I got to figure out another way to do it. So go work on a boat. You know what I mean?
Go get a boat thing.
I'm not trying to get a certain amount of money. I'm just trying to do things that I'm excited about. Yeah.
Right. It's about that process of just continuously being excited,
exactly.
Right? If you're working a mindless job, making $1 million a year, but you're 9 to 5 or even a 9 to 6 maybe, and your mind is just completely trashed for those, 40, 50 hours a week. It's like, what's the money actually worth, because you're killing yourself
nothing.
trying to make money.
money's meant to be used. It's meant to be spent. So if you're just saving it and it's just sitting there, all it's really doing for you is making you more comfortable, or giving you some level of security. But like, if you're not going to use it, I don't know. I mean, and then at a certain point, it's a detriment, where you start to look at really rich trust fund kids whose parents don't figure out how to teach them life skills that, healthy people learn. Then, there's certain like rich families you can dig into, and you just see like, all right, these people, they're just going to give their kids a trust fund. And from a young age, the kids know this, and they realize they don't have to learn anything. They don't have to work for anything. And like, we all know where that goes. Humans, never they good. Pretty much can never handle that. And something bad happens 9 times out of 10.
Which is interesting, right? Because I don't know, because I guess the way I kind of look at it is like, the reason I want to make money is so that I have the freedom of time in order to do whatever I want to do.
Which right now, but right now we're doing what we want to do. So you already have that.
Correct. But I guess I'm trying to tie it back into, I definitely already have that. I 100% agree. I have that. I guess I'm speaking of where my mindset was it was always, I want to have money so I have the freedom to do what I want to do. And here we are. So what gets weird with me is like, why does this happen with these trust fund kids, where it's like, well, now you have the freedom to do what you want to do, yet they are almost, it seems like, on the outside perspective, I have no idea. I don't really know any trust fund kids. From an outside perspective, it seems like they have almost been robbed of that ability to do what they want to do because they already had the money. But money gives you all the time. It gives you the time.
I think there's some ego and self-worth stuff, maybe. If you didn't like build anything, I feel like it's just kind of like eats you up a little bit.
It's almost like handed to you.
Too handed to you, and then you kind of just get a vibe from people that they respect you a little bit less, or that, like, I had a buddy who was a street orphan in a very poor country, and ended up getting adopted by a billionaire. And he's not the only rich kid I know that had trust issues, but he only trusted his friends that didn't know that his dad was a billionaire, who didn't know that he was rich.
That's interesting.
And once they found out that, the relationship changed, and he looked at them differently because he was thinking, well, they might be using me. So there's all kinds of stuff. It'd be cool to find a site.
It becomes a person to person.
It'd be cool to find a psychologist who like specializes in like trust fund kids and stuff like that, because I'm sure there's all kinds of dynamics going on in their heads. And
should I do a quick Google search?
Relational dynamics that it's probably fascinating. Because, I mean, but on a certain level, it comes back to like our evolution and the idea that like we evolved and we survived because we're able to deal with problems and solve problems. And now
Right.
in the first world, arguably we don't have problems. So we're making up problems because
Right.
food is easy, shelter is relatively easy, and those are the two main problems for surviving. So now the next thing is like,
but it seems like we've made money, right? Or is that what you're going to get to?
No, I mean, yeah, but that, like, money it's all a construct. It's like, what is it for? What are you using it for? And
Well,
if
to quote Elvis Presley, absolutely nothing.
if you're using it for food and shelter, but you already have food and shelter,
Or that was war.
then you don't need it. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I'm making a joke. Yeah. Yeah. I guess I just put in a Google search for a psychologist for trust fund kids. So I'll do some research on that and see if I can.
You should try to
find one to bring on the show.
Should, dude. You should. Yeah.
I think that'd be dope. I've talked to a couple, or I guess like one or two psychologists I'm trying to get on the show, but it's hard, man. People just don't have the time.
Yeah, you got to set up a drip and follow up with people, and then as you grow, you have little clips that might pique their interest, make different marketing things to get people excited.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of clips from this that will definitely be I'll need to make some clips of. That's one thing I haven't done is create a lot of clips, which I think would probably be pretty helpful for marketing purposes.
You should, of the cool ones that you've seen little Joe Rogan
cool stuff,
clips,
interesting
that stuff.
Yeah, dude, he's the blueprint that I'm essentially following. I think for, getting people. But I guess I feel like I focus a little bit more on.
There's a lot of those guys now, though. But yeah.
I mean, right. And so I think what I was about to say is I specialize a little bit more in figuring out the process of how do you figure out like what you want to do, more as where I feel like he's a little bit more like, learning about the specialty in particular versus the process of getting to figuring out that specialty. Might be like the small difference there.
I guess you're a little different niche. You're going to be talking to people who have figured it out or haven't figured it out. All his people have figured it out, mostly. I don't know. You could argue that no one's figured out anything.
That's honestly where I operate for him. I operate from the perspective like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm enjoying doing this podcast. I'm going to enjoy making this digital course, but it's like, what does it even mean kind of to figure it out? It's like, maybe you figure out yourself or something like that. Like I could say I figured out how to listen to myself, but I mean, even that's a ever growing process in itself, you know,
for sure.
Cause there's just a whole rabbit hole. But dope, dude. Let's see here. We went through your entire life, I believe, right? Mostly. So you were, mostly figuring out the process. What are the plans from here? I mean, what is your, like, in the spirit of trying to figure it out and in the spirit of what motivates you and what you're trying to do? I mean, it sounds like you kind of covered it, but like, what's your, other than the whole big idea of 150 countries, do you think yachting is going to be what gets you there?
I mean, yachting might get me to, I don't know, 20 or 30 countries at the most. So that means I still got another 60. So yachting's just kind of a cool deal where you can, maybe work 6 months a year, work for 2 or 3 years, and then take a year off and then go right back into it. It's more like a flexible way to make money and travel while getting paid. But how do you
get into that?
I also love just being on the ocean makes me happy. So you get into it by just getting a shitload of experience. You take a couple classes, and usually in Fort Lauderdale, in Palma de Mallorca, Spain, or in Antibes, France. Then you just network until you get on a boat. The first one's the hardest by far, like any job. And then once you've spent a year or two on a yacht, you've met a ton of people and made a ton of friends, and then it's way easier to get employed because you've proven that you're not a weirdo. You've proven that you work hard, that you get along with people, and that you're in the little yachty club, But until you've done that, you're just trying to find any way possible to prove yourself. So like, I've volunteered to deliver boats with people for free, a guide. Some guy's bringing his yacht from La Paz back to San Diego and up to Seattle. I'm like, I'll spend a month for free helping you bring your boat, doing that. You know what I mean? So now you can talk to a yachty and you said, oh, I did that, you know? Literally anything of value. So the scuba diving, obviously, that differentiates me a little bit. My girlfriend's a fitness trainer. So if you're on a big enough yacht that has a gym, they'll want a fitness trainer for either charter guests who are just on there for a week or two, or some billionaire wants a licensed trainer on there, or a masseuse, or you could become a chef, or you could become a helicopter pilot. Like, it's endless options. You basically have to prove that you're valuable and that you have some utility to the team.
And you kind of have like this well-rounded nature almost of, you know, multiple things you bring to the table.
In the beginning, you pretty much have to. And then once you prove that you're likable and that you work hard, and once you're kind of in the club and you have some good references, then you specialize. And you
specialize how so?
So there's three main departments. The interior, which is the bottom is a steward or a stewardess, which is, you know, basically doing cleaning stuff inside, you know, acting as a waiter, maybe a bartender, cleaning, doing laundry, anything inside the boat. Then there's the deck, which the bottom is the deckhand and the top is the captain. And then there's the engine room, which you have engineers. So you learn everything about motors on different boats, and you maintain them and you fix them and you change the oil and all that stuff. So those are the three basics. I mean, you could add on like little niche things, like if the boat is a scuba diving boat or has a air compressor and scuba tanks and all that, then that would be like a little small subset, but that's probably only 5 or 10% of boats, of yachts. Or if it has a helicopter pad, it can be a helicopter pilot or that kind of thing. I mean, and then there's the galley too, which just means the kitchen. So if it's a big boat, there could be 1 or 2 chefs and 4 or 5 sous chefs, or if it's a tiny boat, it could just be one person making all the food.
That's pretty cool. I mean, it's interesting how many variety, I guess, of things are. You basically have your own little house, and it's basically a house on the water. It's got everything.
I mean, the big boats, you can have a crew of 20 or 30, and there could be 10 or 15 guests. So it could be 40 people. Or this guy that I went up to Newport Beach and met, he's getting, what is it? It's a 27-meter one, so like a 90-foot boat. And he just wants to have 3 crew. There could be a 4th, but probably just 3. And then a maximum of 7 guests, which would be him, his wife, his 3 daughters, and maybe one of their boyfriends and a friend or something like that. But that's like really tight, you know. So
that's a small one,
you know. And then there's the sailboat versus the motorboat world. So sail yachts are there's a different style to them, you know. And you have to,
like, culture or the way it runs, obviously.
Both, but I mean culture too. It's
culture.
I mean, sailors are like, if you have a sail yacht, you're into sailing, and so you need to be competent and you need to understand some of the rules of sailing. And there's a whole nother language of sailing, you know. So that's a whole other category that I'm pretty fascinated with. I'm pretty sure that I want to at least spend a year on a sail yacht.
Check it out.
It's just so cool, man. It, like my ancestry is Portuguese, and you know, the fact that they got all around the world just with wind power is so cool. You know,
it's pretty fascinating, right?
It's crazy.
Just using nature.
And now, you know, the toys they have and the technology they have, like, you can just be ripping through the ocean with no power besides the wind, transporting
It's pretty fascinating.
tons of people. And, you know, and then there's like, the first week class you have to take is called the STCW course. And it's like, basic firefighting, CPR, survival at sea, like all this different kind of like basic survival techniques and stuff. And I met this guy who's really into tall ships, which is kind of like a whole nother category. A tall ship, it's like old wooden boats, you know, like a pirate boat. So that, you know, yachts are like luxury rich people living this, you know, decadent life. But tall ships, most of the people who are really into them are kind of historians. Like they want to live like people lived a couple hundred years ago. So they're living
very old fashioned,
you know, wooden boats packed in and like, you know, no TVs.
Is there any electricity? I was going to say.
I mean, there's all different kinds of boats. Like, you know, there's different boats doing different experiences. But when someone says tall ship, it means they're more into like the same kind of boat that would have been operating 200 years ago.
Something you see like in the Pirates of the Caribbean, where it's just like all wood.
Something like that, which, you know, I'm pretty Michelle wouldn't want to do that, but like I would love to go do that for like a month or something. You know what I mean? I don't think. I mean, and then in the same thing, like they're more historians, so there's not a lot of money in that world. So there's not much money to be made. It's usually a bunch of like hippie kind of historians, like trying to live the old way. You know what I mean?
God, it's like the hippies of the yacht,
which could world. Be really cool for a month if you're in a sweet place, but after a while, it's like there's some nice things about 2021. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
we evolved for a reason.
For sure. And then it's like with the yachts, you're going to eventually get into the toys. You know, these guys are buying like $20,000 electric skateboards on water. You know what I mean? Like you used to have to wakeboard behind a boat. Now you just press a button and you're out in the ocean by yourself, freaking surfing around, and like this kind of fun stuff is going to be so cool to get into.
I saw there's like I need to look this up. I think it was the military, but they had like essentially an Iron Man suit that was like water propelled, where like out of your hands and off your feet, you know, it would be pressurized so that you could like kind of basically control yourself, like, you know, essentially like Iron Man.
Well, my buddy works for the guys that ran a business. It was just out of the feet. It wasn't out of the hands. But it connects to a jet ski and you can fly around, and it operated by your house in North Mission Beach.
I think I've seen it before.
Yeah, he worked for them for a couple summers. Like, I mean, there's all kinds of fun stuff like that, you know, that one of my friends, Nikki, who I met scuba diving in Thailand, she's been on yachts for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years or something. And she ended up on a yacht that's got a submarine. And she started learning about the submarine, and now she's in submarine classes. So she's a submarine pilot now. So she, with 3 people and a little ball, goes down 1,000 feet underwater. You know what I mean?
Damn.
Like, she's not a scientist. She didn't go to school for this stuff. I mean, now you could argue she is a scientist, but I mean, you know, that's unreal. Like, who knows? I would love to end up in that direction. That's like so niche that it's hard to try to make that happen, but it's definitely not impossible. Crazier things have happened, you know?
I mean, if it's made for you, I believe that it'll find you. You know?
I think it might. That could be a really cool thing. I actually had a buddy. I lived in Roatan, which is an island that's part of Honduras, and it's funny because every time I tell people this, they're like, "No." It was just a private business. These 2 guys built a submarine, and they took down just civilians, just random people, 1,000 feet underwater. They would sometimes they would like strap a dead horse or a dead cow to it, because then the sharks would come up and eat it. So you're in something that's smaller than a car with 2 or 3 people with
Jeez.
an animal strapped on it that's a similar weight to that submarine, and then you drop to a certain level below a sea shelf where like one of the most ancient animals on the planet, a 6-gill shark, comes up and eats right there, just is biting, you know what I mean? So it's like some wild stuff. And those were just like, they were, I mean, kind of, it's all relative. To me, they're like genius scientists, but they were just regular dudes that I partied with on an island. You know what I mean?
And they thought it was just fun and that's a sick business to be able to just take people down.
It's such a sick business. You know, they worked, I think, 6 months a year, and the other 6 months they would go do cool shit like rock climb and go on jungle adventures and this and that. And then they had like a strict maintenance schedule because you're constantly maintaining the thing because the amount of pressure on it under that much water is a crazy amount of pressure. But
right.
I mean, the guy was my age. I think he went to Penn. He's a cool
really?
dude. My ex-girlfriend's still in contact with him, and he lives in, I think, Tenerife, off the island in the Atlantic, Spanish island, but like just like a normal dude. I think my age or maybe a little younger. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many wild things like that you see out there, you know.
So with the yachts, is it mostly like one person owns them? Because you were kind of mentioning that like 15 or 20 people would go on. Is it usually like corporate yachts, or is it more like one person owns them and then hosts events?
I mean, it's pretty. The terminology is charter or private. So like the yacht, the motor yacht Elysian that I have some friends on, that I got offered a couple short-term positions on. It's owned by the owner of the Boston Red Sox, and he goes on it maybe a couple months a year total. So he'll do like a long weekend here, a 2-week trip here, and the other 10 months of the year that he's not on it, no one's on it. Not no one. The crew's. So the crew is on it, maintaining it. So there's no guests. You know, there's crew and there's guests. So the guests are either the owner of it or charter guests, which means they're renting it. So
then he would have a private yacht, and then can the private people, when they're not using it, make it a charter yacht?
Yeah. So it can be just private. It can be just charter. And if it's just charter, it's really a business. You know what I mean? And then there's private.
You're trying to make money off it.
Then there's private / charter, which is like a person who has a house and Airbnbs it when they're out of town. You know? So if you're on a charter yacht, it's usually harder work because every 2 weeks you're trying to give these people maybe the best experience of their life. It's probably the most money they've ever spent in their life on a week or two. And so they want everything to be perfect. High expectations. Then again, if it's private and the guy's on it all the time and he's a billionaire with really high standards, that could be extremely hard too. But if you have a really rich guy who's really chill and who doesn't spend that much time on it, it could be the most mellow. That's the
optimal.
That's kind of the optimal, but then you don't get tips. Because the charters can make 2 or 3 times more money than the private. If they're charters, they get big tips. But you're working way harder.
I see.
Just depends. There's all kinds of options.
Yeah, it's that trade-off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think you're at least associating yourself with people that have extremely high net worths. So like that has to be valuable in some rights of its own.
Mostly, but I think it's pretty,
you don't really talk to them, I guess.
You might, but it's a little old school in the help. You're the help. You're not hanging out with them on the yacht. You didn't get invited. You're working for them. You know what I mean? And it's more hierarchical than like a restaurant, where someone comes to a restaurant, you're a server, they might talk to you, and you might end up having a beer with them after your shift. I think that's less appropriate in the yachting world, or just not appropriate, because it's, if it's private, like, I think every once in a while there might be a rich guy who's really cool that wants to get to know people, but in general, it's kind of like a royalty servant kind of situation.
Right. You work for me.
I think, and obviously there's all kinds of levels to that it might be crossing a line or inappropriate, or it might be chill and super simpatico, it just depends.
You kind of never know.
Exactly.
Well, cool, dude.
Yeah. That's the next step.
That's what that is.
I'm going to go spend a couple months in
That's your next step.
months in the snowboarding. I'm going to go out to Puerto Rico for a couple weeks. A buddy just invited me. So Michelle's coming out there. We're going to play tons of volleyball.
Dude. That sounds sick. Good.
And then a couple months in the snow, maybe a couple yachting classes, and then back to the travel life until we land the first yachting job.
Nice, bro, dude. I'm excited
too.
Can't wait to hear about it.
How long are you down there?
Yeah. I think I actually might be back in San Diego the first few days of December. Okay. So I have this Airbnb until November 30th, and then December, I think 1st through 4, I might be in San Diego, and then I'll be in Anaheim because there's a jiu-jitsu competition. So I'm going to do that.
So that's why you're cool.
Yeah, that's a real. It's not to come see you.
That's exciting. Hey, me too, man. I'll take it. I think I'll be around. Probably. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
You're gonna probably crash.
It's meant to be, That's the plan, but I'll figure out when I get there. It's exactly what we were just talking about. It all work itself out.
So what's the jiu-jitsu thing? Is that just a big goal for you? You've been training for it?
Yeah, been training. It's a big reason I came here was to train jiu-jitsu with some of the best in the world. And so it's the biggest tournament that they've got going on. It's literally the world championship. They're hosting it in Anaheim, the 9th through the 12th, I believe. Yeah,
exciting, man.
Yeah. So the plan is to do that, and then I think afterwards, I don't really know what I'm doing that next week. I might stay in Anaheim, might come down to San Diego.
You'll figure it out,
And then the goal from there is I think like that next week I'll probably do Christmas with the family. And then after that, I think I'm going to head back to Brazil or maybe go to like Eastern Europe or somewhere, maybe I'll talk to you about where I should go next. Somewhere, dollar goes far. I can learn some cool stuff. We'll figure it out.
No, man. There's Southeast. Have you done Southeast Asia yet?
I have not. That is a good point.
I'd go
I have not done Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia.
If you're thinking there's a chance you're going to do this travel thing for like a year or more, potentially, even if not right now, but at some point in your life, I'd go to Thailand or Bali. They're just hubs for that. You know what I mean? And
I feel like I hear about it a lot.
You'll meet a shitload of people there who have been traveling for 5 years, or who have been living in Asia for 5 years. And it's inexpensive. You can stretch it for a long time. I would just fly to Bangkok or Bali, go to a hostel that's rated high on Hostel World. You'll be out partying on the first night, and within a week you'll meet so many people, and you'll have so many options of where you can go. Because when you're in Asia, it's just like the travel is so like dialed in and well organized that it's like, oh, you pay some dude $12 and the next thing you know, like you're on an island 7 hours away. You went on a bus, you went on a boat, you went on another bus, and you're in some other cool hostel that has a different vibe. You hang out there. Hang out there for a week. Maybe a week turns into a month or two. Or you meet some chick and then you go to some place that she wants to go to. But in Southeast Asia, you can like do it for a long time. There's cool history. I mean, obviously you need to check on the COVID stuff, but I mean, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, all inexpensive, all super cool. You can get into scuba diving for 3 days or for a week or whatever.
I
I'd go there.
I am now certified with scuba diving.
You should go dive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
You meet amazing
else.
people in the diving world, and you'll meet a lot of people who you could interview for this kind of thing, will be fascinating. Will be like, you've been in Thailand for 7 years and you grew up in Costa Mesa, you know?
Talk about figuring out people who figure out what they want to do, right?
Yeah, you're from Saskatchewan and you've been to 80 countries and done this and that, and like it's full of people like that. Asia, less now
cool.
because of COVID, but I'm sure that a bunch of them figured out how to stay because they fall in love with it, and then they're like, "This is my home. I'm not going anywhere."
Yeah, fuck you. I'm staying.
I'm sure there's a lot of that going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool,
yeah, bro.
Sweet. I love the insight. Always love catching up with you. Do you have anything you want to plug or encourage people before we get out of here?
Not really.
Anything you want to tell people?
Not really, man. We could do this again in a few months. Maybe I'll have something then, but I'm going to take my time on figuring out all that stuff. I'm just going to be on the next adventure, dude.
Love it, dude. That's what this life's about. Just one adventure after another.
Well, I'll see you in December.
Well, thanks, man.
Appreciate it. Much love, brother.
Yeah, dude. Hey, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for your time. As we were just talking about how precious it is.
You know what we should do? If we don't do this again before next year on this date, you should put it on your calendar to do it next year on this date.
Next year on this date.
I mean, maybe we want to do it before then, but just to not procrastinate and I just like to put stuff on calendars you want to do, So it might be
okay. Yeah. Do you want to send me?
It might be fun to do this again.
We could do it.
Just do it again in a year.
Just same date. I think that'd be kind of cool.
Same date next year.
All right.
We'll see where we're at.
I don't know if I've ever planned something that far ahead, but yeah, let's. I'm down for that. That sounds fun. Let me just do like the signing off kind of thing, and then we can write that down. But yeah, dude. Again, thank you, Paul, for coming. Everybody, appreciate for you listening for this for this long. Hopefully, you learned something about sailing, or something you can try out, or maybe something about basketball. And I don't know. I feel like there's a whole load of information in here you can learn about. With that being said, if you did learn something, if you had these conversations before with people, please share. I want this getting into like-minded individuals. It's how this grows, honestly, which is obviously important, but even furthermore, it just spreads the word. I think that's more important to me. Again, I'm going to replug. Let me know if you're interested in the digital course that I was talking about at the beginning with like helping people find their passion and their journey. I'm going to put a Calendly link down in the description below. So, get in touch with me. Let's get something on the calendar, talk for 30 minutes about it. And other than that, let's grow together.